In the assessment process, it's going to be important to really think broadly about clients. We can almost, with any mental health issue, people are oftentimes thinking too narrowly about themselves and about the situation and about the environment and so forth. So, as counselors and mental health professionals, we do have to think very broadly. So one way to conceptualize clients, and it doesn't mean that we're asking clients all these questions, but it's something that we're keeping in mind, so to make sure that we're not developing a narrow focus, which is really disempowering and unfair to the client when we do that. The biological, clearly genetics can play a role. We know from the twin studies that genetics plays a big role in such things as, addiction and how we measure intelligence at this time, and even stuff like neatness. So genetics plays a role, and so clearly in an intake, gathering family history data and asking about any relatives who've had addiction or mental health issues and so forth is important. With biographical, we're talking about everything from conception to birth to death, however you want to word that. And so this also includes any kind of oppression that they've experienced and discrimination. It includes where they've lived and where they've been brought up. But anything that has happened. So a timeline is really nice with this one too. A life timeline, which we've done a video on, just to see what were the highs and the lows, what kind of events happened in their life, and how do they think that has affected them now? How has oppression affected them now if they've experienced that and so forth? So that tends to be where most mental health professionals focus, is on biographical, and maybe the medical professionals focus more on biological. We need to make sure that we're thinking broadly and not just narrowing just to biographical. Now, the environmental is, this one's going to be a little bit probably unusual when you haven't heard of it, but is also considering any kind of toxins that they were brought up around, any pollutants, whether it was in the air or the water or, in their house. In the medical profession, if they start seeing kind of a trend of patients with different kinds of issues, they do have to report that. But it's important to consider that, if somebody is living near a power plant or whatever that could be affecting kind of mental health issues, that we consider this. We don't want to be doing, we can still be doing cognitive restructuring with folks, but maybe what they're experiencing is just a terrible environment that they're living in, with a lot of kind of toxins and so forth that are affecting their nervous system. The last one, and I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about existential. Clearly, the psychological professions have kind of embraced that spiritual values, and we look at some of the research to suggest that there's a big percentage of folks here in the U.S. that do believe in kind of something greater than themselves, a higher power, however they define it. So with existential is, this can be involved in understanding their spiritual or religious values, understanding what they view as their purpose in life. But it can also be with somebody coming in, and you might see this with depression and anxiety particularly, when people start asking themselves kind of bigger questions like, hey, what is my purpose here? What is really meaningful? There can be a relationship and career changes when this happens, and that can be incredibly stressful. So I think inviting clients, I've written an article about this, just inviting clients to be able to express and talk about spiritual and religious values and purpose and meaning and anything like that is going to be critical to really broadly conceptualizing clients. And so this is a tool that we should be using to keep from narrowing our focus, which really can do the client harm.